Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photography chat live stream where we come together as a community and talk about photography and see how everybody's doing. I'm doing well, thanks, and I hope you guys are doing well. And as always, I always like the audience to drive the conversation for the live stream. So if you have any questions or topics you want to talk about, you can just leave them in the chat section and I'll do my best to answer them. Let me just go into the chat section and start off. I see Anthony's here. Good to see you, Anthony. The rumors from 43 Rumors, all new Pro 50 to 250 f4 with IS coming out later this year. Possibly. I did read that article. I'll talk about that a little bit. And also say OM System should at least introduce an all-new PenF styled camera this year with a new sensor, helping Micro Four Thirds get excited about the system, especially with street and travel photographers. Okay, possibly. I have a lot of thoughts on that, actually. And good morning, David. Good to see you. Robert, good to see you. And man, we had a good day at Huntley yesterday. Too bad you couldn't make that. And then Jeff, good to see you. And Sebastian, good to see you. And Marsh, always good to see you. In Florida, you know, we're going to get another snowstorm tonight. It's not going to be much snow, like maybe 2 to 3 inches, but it's going to be windy, like wind gusts up to 40 or 50 miles an hour. That's pretty rough. That's like taking down tree kind of wind. And then let's see. Stuart, good to see you. And Heather, good to see you. And George, yes, we should be live right now, I think. Let me know the audio and video is good. I think we should be good. I had a little trouble getting audio started for the stream, but I think we're all set now. Okay, that said, let me go ahead and just start off with Anthony's first questions here or comments about the 50 to 250 f4 with ImageStation. So I think the way the article read was that you know, the guy that runs the 43 Rumor site got an email early last year about the 50 to 200 f2.8 coming out, and that same person also mentioned that a 50 to 250 f4 could come out. And since the 50 to 200 f2.8 came out, he feels pretty good about the 50 to 250 f4. And that would be a welcome addition, I think, to the lineup. Something a little bit more, you know, in the price range that most of us can justify, right? It's hard to justify a $3,800 lens, and that, you know, except for the most extreme or enthusiastic enthusiasts, right? For the 50 to 250 f4, if that can come in at about half the price, say $1,600 to $1,800, now we're talking you know, accessible, I guess. I mean, everything's so expensive now. But compared to, say, when the 40 to 150 f4 came out, which was the alternative to the 40 to 150 f2.8, it's roughly a third to almost 40% less, I believe, and I've seen it as low as half as much for sale. Like, I've seen it down to like $699. But I think right now, I don't know what that's going for. Let me just take a quick look. It's retailing for, or it's on sale now for $899. So, and the 40 to 150 f4 is $1,500. So it's almost half. Let's say 30-40% less. So if we extrapolate that data to the 40 to 150, it's on sale for $3,500. Let's say times 60% of that puts it about $2,000 or $2,100. But that's certainly a lot easier to swallow than $3,500 to $3,800 if it can be at a $2,000 range. If they can get it under $2,000, that would be ideal. Say, you know, double the cost of the 40 to 150 f4, and you know, make it weather sealed, have image stabilization, take teleconverters. I think that was also mentioned in the rumor. that would be a great addition. That would definitely be something that I might consider. I don't know. I don't know if I would need something like that. I always need more reach, and I want to talk about this lens monster behind me that I borrowed from David. So thanks, David, for lending me this for a little while. It's the 150 to 600 OM Systems lens, and I took it out yesterday for a little bit. I spent half my time trying to configure or get used to the lens, and just when we were leaving, I was just starting to get a feel for it. So I didn't get a lot of great pictures. Tell you something funny happened to me yesterday. But so I don't know. What do you guys think? 50 to 250 f4, around $2,000. Would you guys get one? I'm just curious. It's not on my short list, primarily because of the focal length. It's not something I would use very much. And I'm very content with my 40 to 150 kit lens, which is an f4 to 5.6 for $129. I think that's all I paid for it. I think I paid $99 for mine. Or, yeah, I paid $99 because it came as a kit together with my EM10 Mark II like 10 years ago. And it's still going strong. That said, going on to the next part is OM System should at least introduce an all-new Pen F styled camera this year with a new sensor. Okay, so you know, some photo shows going on next week. We'll see if anything gets announced or rumored. But I don't see a Pen F coming. It's just not happening with the OM 3 out. Certainly not a new sensor. That is not going to happen. There's just no way. You know, going from say 20 megapixels, which is just to most of us as enthusiasts and already well into the system, you know, we're fans of OM System. And even if we're not, you know, I think most photographers can agree that 20 megapixels is enough, right? For most things, when we're talking about photography. When we talk about video, we do need a little bit more to kind of get into the higher specs. So hybrid shooters would really appreciate a higher megapixel camera. I think as photographers, we don't really need more than 20. You know, 16 is actually about, I would say, the minimum that I would take, but I've shot with 12 and got great results, like with my TG7, or TG5, I should say. But with reference to, let me see if I can just put the statement up here. With reference to the part about helping Micro Four Thirds to get excited, you know, helping new people specifically to get excited about the system. People that are shopping cameras for the first time, because there is a trend towards people wanting smaller everyday cameras with dedicated buttons and dials and have that exclusive, you know, exclusive use, right? For that, where it's just a camera, dedicated camera, and moving away from cell phones. There's definitely a trend there. I'm definitely seeing that. You can see that with the used market sales of compact cameras, fixed lens cameras. The introduction of, say, you know, when the X106 came out, and the Leica Deluxe 8, and let's see, the Sony RX1 Mark III. You know, there's a lot. Leica's come out with a few other, you know, full frame versions, and like I said, again, on the used market, especially like the Digicam market, a lot of cameras are selling for more than what they did when they were new. And in fact, I went to the camera store, and I'll share the conversation I had with the one of the sales reps there. But while I was there, there was a young lady buying a G7X Mark III. Now, and you know, that thing sells for like what, $900 or something? Let me look that up. What does she just pay for that? G7X Mark III. Yeah, $899 or $879. Uh, wait, holy crap, 1179. Because I'm seeing used prices. Let me just go to Best Buy. Best Buy will have the current retail. All right. She just bought this thing, okay? I don't know if she paid $1,500 or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. For a camera that came out years ago, like 5 years ago or something. Something crazy. I guarantee she's never bought a camera in her life. Okay? Based on that. You can almost get an you can certainly get an OM5 Mark II. They had one there in stock, a sand beige one. I was that close to getting it. But where was I going with this thought? Well, basically, people are buying fixed lens cameras. Somebody bought one right there, right when I was in the store there, and I'm just boggled by it, because for that price point, you can get the Canon PowerShot V1, by far superior camera, larger sensor, better autofocus, better audio. You know, like, is it called a PowerShot? Yeah, the PowerShot V1, $899. You could almost buy two of those. But because of TikTok and all of these, but that said, you look at the Canon R6 Mark III, they bumped up to 33 megapixels. You look at the well, that's another example. I don't look at these cameras that much, so it's not coming to me. Some other cameras, but but entry level people buying cameras for the first time, megapixel is kind of just a quick way for them to get a sense if this is a newer camera or not. Because older cameras, they have lower megapixels, or inferior cameras will have lower megapixels, is the perception, right? So Fuji came out with their 40 megapixel sensor. So that's perceived as an improvement and more modern, right? Than, say, OM Systems coming out with another 20 megapixel. Panasonic came out with a 25 megapixel camera. And that was that the fact that they came out with 25 megapixels and it was a decent sensor got a lot of good reviews and praise when it initially came out. I don't know how it's selling now, but it's still a great camera. So OM System has to deal with that if they want to get new customers, is they have to check these boxes of more megapixels to get new customers. But I don't know, but my sense is their marketing strategy, and it changed a little bit in 2025. You know, they're focused on adventure, right? Taking your camera out into the woods and harsh weather conditions, durability, and you're going to go hiking 10 or 20 miles into the mountains. You want to carry as light a weight of gear as possible, but with as minimal compromise to image quality. It's a very, very niche market. And for what OM System is offering, you know, they're right at that price point where there's a ton of other cameras out there, you know, at these price points. So they're focusing on the durability, the weather sealing and ruggedness, and to some extent the computational modes, right? The high-res shot mode for landscape, the starry sky, you know, for astro, and, you know, the ND filters, the grad ND filters. So they're doing all this stuff. And I think short term, that might be okay. But long term, it's going to be a problem, right? Because short term, it's going to keep a lot of us in the system that do that anyway and really appreciate the advantages that and the lens selection, because the lenses are so good, you know, for sports action wildlife in the OM systems. You know, starting with the 40 to 150, 2.8, the 300 f4, the 100 to 400, the 150 to 600, and then the big white, the 150 to 400 with teleconvert. I mean, they got the lenses and they got the camera system, the OM1 Mark II, which can do 50 frames per second with continuous autofocus, subject detect for birds and animals. You know, they are all in on that market. But in 2025, they introduced a camera like the OM3 that they distinctly marketed as an everyday kind of camera to capture your lifestyle, right? It's your everyday lifestyle type camera. And they also brought back the creative dial to do the film simulations, right? So you have some more creative control. And that's markedly different than the OM1 Mark II. It doesn't, you know, ergonomically and the retro style. So they try to do everything with the OM3 that the OM1 Mark II did not, right? The OM1 Mark II is very utilitarian and very focused on ruggedness, wildlife, weather, all that good stuff. And they even added the dedicated video to photo switch and fast and slow motion stuff on a separate dial. So you have a separate dial for that, a separate dial for the color, creative stuff. So this camera is very, very different, and it's focused on hybrid shooters, trying to capture the market for both photography and video, give it that retro styling for that appeal that seemed to be very popular, and put it into as compact a body as possible, but keeping all of the performance of the OM1 Mark II, pretty much, like 99%. Now, you guys know, for me, that's my favorite camera of all time. By far. Not by far, but by a lot. It is no question, and a lot of people that have bought that camera love that camera, right? And then there's other people that, you know, they can't use a camera without a grip. Okay, they just won't do it. It's too cumbersome, too uncomfortable, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not faulting anyone that doesn't like the OM3 because there's no grip, or ergonomically it's kind of a nightmare, right? It's very old design. And I get that. So just get the OM1 Mark II or whatever. So OM Systems is diving into that area with the OM3. And they also made statements, if I recall, about trying to find a direction to reintroduce the Olympus Pen series, which wildly popular in Japan, somewhat popular here in the US, but not so much. I don't know about other places. But given the trend towards everyday cameras and using dedicated cameras that have sort of that vintage style, the Pen would be an awesome addition to the lineup this year. I see that happening way beyond another Pen F with a viewfinder. They're going to introduce, I guarantee, they'll introduce a Pen EP8, because they have the EP7 from a few years ago, which was like a Pen F Lite. But they're going to introduce a EP8. That's my prediction. An EP8 to try to capture that part of the market and generate new business, because they desperately need new business to expand their market share and get people into the system. But this camera needs to be like $1,000 or less. I would love it if they could come out with something like an OM20, something below even reintroducing the EM10 as an OM10, something even lower than that that's like at a $500 price point. But I would say they will put their money on a Pen EP8. because that's going to have the creative dial for the film simulation type stuff. It's going to have a vintage look, and it's going to be portable, compact, and I think it's gonna check all the boxes, but it's still gonna have a 20 megapixel sensor. There's just no way they're gonna put a new sensor in for at least another 2 to 3 years. I just don't see it happening. And they're gonna invest more into the AI side of things, I think, and try and develop more computational modes, improve the sensor that we have in there now through some sort of AI chip to reduce noise or whatever. I don't know what they're going to do. But there's nothing off the shelf from Sony right now that they could put in a new camera that would make any sense, right? So, excuse me. So my prediction is they're going to lean into this year more, because they just launched that city and lifestyle through the viewfinder. I think that's what it was called. They also did that late last year, where you can submit images, or employees are submitting images, whatever, of their daily lifestyle type shots, street, diners, whatever. That would be that's also an indication that they might be bringing back the Pen series, but they're trying to find a marketing strategy or a message to go with the Pen series. So look for more things in that direction, I think. I don't see like an OM1 Mark III. Maybe at the end of the year we'll hear some rumors about it or an announcement, but we're not going to get another flagship camera this year, I don't think. Another camera they could consider is the redoing the TG8. I think there was a rumor about that as well, going into from the ground up, redesigning the TG8. It would be nice if they could stick at least a 1-inch sensor in a TG8. If they could get away with a micro four thirds sensor in it, make it a little bigger, sort of like the Canon V1, but make it rugged, they would have a huge winner, I think, there in the compact fixed lens camera market. So there's a couple of things they need to do, right, for 2026 is a Pen EP8 to drive to take advantage of the small compact camera, dedicated camera that has some retro vibes to it, both the output of the photos, like add a new art film simulations to it like Fuji does. They got Velvia and all that other stuff, right? Have some new, they call it art filters in OM systems. They need to change the name of that from art filter to something like, whatever, retro simulations or retro filters, right? They need to call it something else other than art filters. And create some new ones that have sort of a vintage film look, because the color wheel that like the OM3, the Pen F have, and the EP7 have is still very limiting, because you can only change the saturation of individual colors, and then with a little bit of shifting in the white balance you can change somewhat the overall hues and looks. But they really need to be able to expand that as well, so that you can adjust the hues and luminance in camera of the individual colors, or just do what Panasonic did, just let you upload LUTs. LUTs is a little bit intimidating, I think, to a new user, but having it simplified like Fuji does with film simulations, just call it retro simulations, because they can't do film simulations because they don't have licenses to any of the film stock. Unlike Fuji, they own those, right? So EP7 with retro simulations, and I would say a new TG8 with a larger sensor, to just, because the TG7, fabulous cameras, doing well. So let me go into the conversation I had with the camera store, and I'll start with OM Systems, right? They order OM system gear 2-3 times a year, and every time they do, they sell out of the OM3. They don't sell fast, but guaranteed to go. They say, yeah, it's doing pretty well. Every time we get them in, they all eventually go. They may not go right away, but you know, they'll have a month where we, you know, if they get 5 in, they might sell 4 of them one month, and then the last one a couple months later, something like that, right? Same thing with the OM5 Mark II and the Sand Beige. Everybody wants that camera. They get 5 or 6 in, it's gone. It's gone. They got 1 left right now, and they just got them in, I know, like last week. And they only got 1 left. I don't know how many they get in exactly, but they don't get that many. TG7 also does well, they said. They get those in, they sell out, right? Not right away, but eventually. Within the window of when they get their next orders in, right? So they're very, very content to continue to support and sell OM system gear in their stores. They have all the lenses there, just about. And the lenses do sell well. So that was very, very encouraging for me to hear that from those guys. So I asked them about other camera systems like Nikon, Canon, Sony. Okay, of the 3, the Sony is very consistent. They order those all the time, and they always sell out. The Nikon is a little bit tougher, a little tougher for them. It's not selling quite as much as like Sony, for example. Canon is also tough. That surprised me, because if you look at all the market data, Canon's #1. And I said, well, what about the new R6 Mark III? I mean, that's a killer camera. And the word is, well, you know, they came out with the R6 Mark III. It's a little faster, a few more megapixels. Nobody's switching from the R6 Mark II. They're not trading those in to get the Mark III. And Fuji, let me see, what did he say about Fuji? He said the Fuji, really, it's only the X100 that's selling for them. The X-T5, the X-H2, X-H2S, not so much. And that surprised me. But people want to get the X100 all day long. So that's kind of the status of the individual camera systems. You know, OM System doesn't have the volume that these other cameras do at their store, but they don't hesitate to get another order in and bring them in, because they know they'll sell them. So that's kind of where it's at on the ground where I live. And what I see in the field, there's a lot of OM System users out there at Hunley Meadows. A lot. And I see a lot of Nikon shooters as well. And a lot of the Canon shooters I saw still shooting the DSLRs, like the 7D and the 90D. I see those time to time. And only 1 or 2 Sony shooters. The Sony shooters are the heavy hitters out there. They're the ones out there with their like 300 2.8, their 600 f4s. They ain't kidding around. You know, the Sony shooters. They got their A1 and A1 Mark II. I don't see a lot of like A7 Vs or A7 4s, like the mid-range type cameras in the field. I see the heavy hitters out there, you know, $20,000 worth of gear. And, you know, 1 camera, 1 lens, 20 grand, right? That's what I see on Sony. for birding and wildlife. In the street, when I'm walking around, I see a lot of point and shoots, believe it or not. Point and shoots from younger people. But okay, anyway, that was my day yesterday at the camera store, or the day before. It was quite enlightening and very encouraging for OM Systems. But yeah, if OM Systems doesn't, I just don't know, because the OM5 Mark II, people really like it when they see it. He said they really like the OM5 Mark II when they see it, but they usually end up getting something else. For whatever reason, you know, because, and I bet it's because it's 20 megapixels, right? People are just not latching onto it, because you can buy just about any other camera system, and like an XM5 is what, $900, and it has 26 megapixels, and it's just as small, if not, it's smaller than the OM5 Mark II. No EVF, but just saying, the XM5 does pretty well. That's right, that he did say the XM5 does well. The XT50, 40 megapixels, pretty much the same size as an OM5 Mark II. So I think that's kind of what it is hurting them to be at 20 megapixels for brand new customers. And I really, so I can appreciate Anthony's enthusiasm to have a new sensor, even though when I have all my guests on, you know, Lee in particular is very verbose about, you know, you don't need more than 20. We know that. We know that as photographers, you don't need more than 20, right? But people walking into the store, they see a 20 megapixel camera, they think, yeah, this has got older tech in it. Even though it's an amazing camera, I don't hesitate recommending an OM5 Mark II. It's such a good little camera. It's so small and 400 grams, right? 399 grams or whatever. It's tiny, lightweight, durable, weather sealed, lots of computational modes. The only thing it doesn't have is the subject detect. But the face detect works really, really well in that camera. So I was thinking about trading my EM5 Mark III in just to get the sand beige one. I might do that tomorrow. Get a couple $100 for my EM5 and get the OM5 Mark II. So anyway, great talking, great subject there, Anthony, to talk about. I don't know. What do you think? What do you guys think? I don't know. Sorry, my chat window is going crazy here. So let's see what else we got. Oh, hey, I just saw this. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. You know, it's support from you guys, becoming a member for 99 cents or making donations, using my affiliate links to buy stuff. All of that helps me so much. And I really appreciate it. Okay, let me find my place here in the chat. So audio video is good. I'm glad. You know, I should have checked this first before I did anything else, right? Because I could have been talking for 20 minutes and nobody heard me. Okay, Thomas, good to see you. It's below freezing where you are. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I think, no, we're certainly above freezing here, but tonight it's going to be cold. And Paul, good to see you. Regular to my photo editing stream. And Ethan, good to see you, Ethan. Hopefully you got that bag in by now. You ordered a bag. Ethan, and a lot of you drop into my Tuesday shopping streams where we find deals. What do you think of that bag? It's pretty good, right? I should have, after the stream was over, I just remembered I put extra padding on the bottom. You know, I found some dividers from another bag that I could put along the bottom, because the bottom needs just a little bit more padding. And Paul says, why would I let this instead of the 40 to 150? Or why would, I think you meant, why would I get this instead of the 40 to 150? well, the 50 to, well, for the reach, if we're talking about the 50 to 250, if we're talking about the 50 to 200, that's one of those things that Robin said it best, Robin Wong, you know, if you if you buy it, you know you need it. If you're on the fence about it, you probably don't need it. One of those things, right? Okay, and good morning, Butters Gatto. Good to see you. And how do you like the weight of the 150 to 600? And did I use teleconverters? So, okay. Initially, it was really cumbersome because I'm not used to big heavy lens, right? And even at the end of that shoot, I was there about 3 hours. I was like, if you bring this lens, you're pretty much committed to using it because it's not an easy lens to just swap with something else. Like if I want to go back to my 12 to 40, 12 to 45, right, and do some wide angle shots. It's not the kind of lens you just take your camera off, put this big giant lens in your bag, right? You need a backpack or a series dedicated case, right? Because when you take that off your camera, you have to put it somewhere. So it's not coming off your camera. A better solution is to bring two cameras, one with that lens on it and one with the other one. But most of us, I think if I go out shooting with that lens, that's all I'm going to do is shoot with that camera and lens. So if I went that way, if I went with that mindset, because I wasn't expecting to use it that day. I just pulled into the parking lot and Dave said, "Hey Rob, do you want to borrow the 150 to 600?" I said, "Hell yeah." I'd love to, even though I brought my 300 f4 with teleconverter. Because I hadn't really shot with that lens more than like maybe 30 minutes 2 years ago when he first got the lens. We shot some hummingbirds and I was fairly impressed with it. So with respect to the weight and the size, you have to be committed. Now, what I decided to do, I almost was going to go back out today, but it's raining and it's going to be windy, and then it's going to snow tonight. But what I decided to was put it onto a black rapid strap. Because originally when I was out in the field, I used the monopod and gimbal, and that's great if you're like stuck, like at Conowingo, where you're pretty much kind of stuck on the pier, right? You can't go anywhere. There's no trail or anything to go hiking. It's just right there. Monopod and gimbal makes a lot of sense in that scenario. But at Hunley Meadows, you don't know what you're going to get because sometimes the birds and ducks are like 10 feet away, and other times they're 100 yards away or 100 meters, however you want to think about it. Anywhere from your distance changes from like 3 meters to 100 meters or 10 feet to 100 yards, like this at Hunley Meadows, because there's all kinds of activity. At least there was yesterday. Sometimes you go there and it's the Dead Sea, it's nothing, but yesterday was really active. And being on a monopod and gimbal with this thing was very, very limiting because I wanted to get down low and shoot some ducks, and I can't because it's on a monopod, right? And then, the seagulls and other birds just flying right over your head. Unlike Conowingo, where the eagles are always way out, 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards. They're way out, right? Gimbal is very easy to manage that, but not at Hunley. So this is going to be my new setup. It's Black Rapid, and I think I can handle this. And of course my OM3, right? OM1 would make more sense with this setup, so I might do that. But yeah, it's a little heavy. It's a little heavy, but I got used to it, and I was starting to get a feel for it. And I think if I go out like this next time, where I can just let the camera rest when there's no activity happening, because I was struggling a little bit with the settings, and I was also trying to use that technique that Lee Hoy was talking about with the using the highlight warnings to meter your exposure, on the fly. I still can't do it exactly like he described it, but I did come up with sort of a compromise that I'm gonna try. Like I said, I just got a really good feel for it towards the end, and then we were pretty much everybody wanted to go eat, so we left, and including myself, I was hungry. But we got to a point where I was very comfortable with it, the size and the weight, and using the lens. And I shot almost everything at 600 millimeters. And even then I couldn't fill the frame, for a lot of things. And there was a few shots where I had to kind of pull in back to 300 millimeters. And the shots are great. The lens is very sharp. It's a great lens. It's not quite as tack sharp as my 300 f4, even with the teleconverter, because my 300 f4 with the 1.4 is still just a hair sharper, just a hair. I've only done some very limited testing. I'll try and quantify that more over the week, but and as far as my workaround or compromise, so the idea being, when you're birding, you want to be in full manual. You set your exposure with the shutter speed, ISO, aperture. You set all of those things. And then you use the highlight meter and adjust your ISO to be within the range of the highlights, so you're not clipping highlights. So you're always basically exposing to the right. And I struggled with that whole thing, because my brain has been wired for exposure compensation and using auto ISO. So I missed so many shots. And then, I jibber jabber with everybody there, right? It's kind of a social thing too. So my head wasn't completely in line with doing good photography, right? But I'm pretty comfortable with it, almost to the point I'm thinking about maybe getting this lens again, because I had ruled it out for two reasons, and I would say it's about equal. Both of them were kind of equal reasons, but one is the size and weight, and then also the cost, right? Because I want to save up and get the 150 to 400. Why would I spend $2,000 now? Because it's on sale for $2,000 now, when I should be putting that towards a 150 to 400. But I don't know if the 150 to 400 will ever be in my price range. It's just so expensive. It might be years. So maybe I can get one of these for the next 2-3 years and use it. I got to think about it. But that said, let me show you a couple pictures I took with it, since we're talking about this lens. And I already posted them to my Flickr and Instagram. Let's start here. So these are just the so here's a seagull, right? Whoop-de-doo. But I liked it, and I'll pull up the EXIF data. I don't know if you guys can see it, so I'll read it out. But this is at 1/2000th of a second, wide open at f6.3, ISO 400, and I was in full manual mode. Yeah. So I was still trying to do this using the highlight metering, and I was struggling. But I got a nice sequence of this eagle flying. I was able to track at 600 millimeters, no problem. I mean, I would be happy with a 600 millimeter prime, to be honest, but that would be an awesome lens to add to the lineup, a 600 millimeter prime. Make it a 5.6 so it's not ginormous, and we'll be good. This is a merganser, and this one's at 1/1000th of a second, and I tried not to drop below that shutter speed. If I was paying attention, again, I'm in full manual mode, f6.3 ISO 500, and this is another one I was trying to do the highlight metering, and I just love the framing of this shot. I wish I could have got a little bit lower, but this lens is so big and heavy. And I'm borrowing this lens. It's not mine, so I was trying to be extra careful and not have the lens hanging over the water, so I can get that like down to the water level type shot. I was trying to minimize that because I'm not quite used to the weight. But yeah, so I just stayed on the pier, and I didn't go down below the pier like I normally do sometimes, where I hold the camera right at the water level. Sometimes the lens hood dips into the water a little bit. So I tried not to do that because it's not my lens. So anyhow, I love this shot. I love the framing of the grass on the right, framing the bird. The water is really surreal, gives a very surreal look to it. And the lighting was perfect. The sun was kind of peeking in and out that day, so I didn't get good light all the time, but I got good light this time. And this is a coot. Now this one I did get down almost at water level here, so I did risk it a little bit, but I was getting more comfortable with the lens. And I think, like I said, a few more times out, and I'll be doing everything I want to do with this lens. But I thought this came out pretty nice. Really good detail. Of course, I'm using DxO. Here I'm at 1/1000th of a second. The sun went back behind a cloud on this shot, so the lighting is a little bit softer. But we're at ISO 1600, f6.3, full manual mode. And this duck, somehow I bumped the shutter. I'm at 1/640th of a second, way too slow for a shot like this. ISO 800, f6.3, full manual mode. You know, I think I was shooting something else, and I was saying, let me see if I can go down to 1/640th of a second. And then this duck decided to fly out of the water. But I got him. I got a nice sequence of him flying. This shot I misfocused somehow. So this red hawk is not quite as sharp as I wanted it to be. So I just did all kinds of sharpening sliders and all that to try to mitigate the softness in this. But it's not the lens's fault. Somehow I misfocus. I had it in animal detect instead of bird detect. There was something. This was one of the first shots I took, so I didn't have all my settings dialed in quite yet. Here's a little song sparrow. I didn't know they forage in the water, so this was kind of interesting to me in the sense that, I see sparrows day and night in my backyard, but I've never seen them in the water like this. And it wasn't like taking a bath or anything. He was going for stuff to eat. So it's very interesting to me. But this shot came out great. So here I'm also at 600 millimeters. And in this case, I was in shutter priority. So this was early on, right? This is before I tried to do the highlight metering method. I was still in my shutter priority, ISO 1250, 1/800th of a second, which is about right. This came out pretty good. Nice, lots of nice detail in there. And then here's some deer. Now this was probably the second shot I took that day. This deer, it's actually a whole family of deer back there. 1/800th of a second f 6.3 shutter priority, but ISO 8000. So you can see what a difference when the sun goes behind a cloud versus coming out of the cloud. There's easily a 4 or 5 stop difference in lighting. And that's where I struggled with manually adjusting things. you know, using the highlight metering. My brain's just not wired that way yet, but I'll get there. I'll get there because I can see the advantages of it. This one is heavily cropped, but and again, it didn't quite perfectly focus on this seagull, but it was kind of a cool shot anyway. So again, I'm at 1/2000th of a second, wide open f6.3, ISO 1600, and full manual mode. This one, I had to zoom back to 300 millimeters, so I'm at 314 millimeters. Full manual mode, ISO 1000. So we only went down to f5.9, even though we're at half the focal length. We didn't even gain like a tenth of a stop, you know, hardly any. We hardly gained any light through the aperture going down to 300 millimeters because we're at f5.9. 1/1000th of a second. But the duck's head is completely covered with water except a little bit around the eyes. But lots of great detail there. Of course, you know, I'm filling the frame and got everything in there. Same thing here. This one was pretty far away, so it's pretty heavily cropped. But I had good lighting. I'm at 1/1000th of a second, f6.3, ISO 320, full manual mode. But this time, yeah, this was later in the evening. I was trying to transition to my sort of hybrid method, and I'll talk about that if you guys are interested. But basically, I'm using auto ISO in full manual mode, and I went back to dialing in exposure compensation. But there's a difference. It's different than and then these are some test shots I was doing to test sharpness between the two. Yeah, these are kind of boring, but so that's what I did with this lens, and overall I took about 4,000 shots. So funny thing happened. It was with this bird here, actually, this shoveler. I think that's what it's called. I caught another pair of shovelers, a male and a female, taking off for the water and going out to fly, right? And they flew right past me. And I filled the frame practically with these two birds. I had two birds almost filling the frame. And because my tracking, honestly, my tracking is really good. I'm really good at tracking. Even at the 600 millimeters, no problem. But I was in pro capture mode, so I captured them sitting on the water, like 20 frames of that, and then about 5 or 6 frames of them taking off out of the water, right? And this lens, you're limited to 25 frames per second. You don't get the 50 frames per second like with the 300 f4. And I can tell the difference. Going from 25 to 50 frames is a big deal. Anyway, I'm just glowing as I'm capturing these. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome, right? And then they got out of frame. You know, they got too far away. And I went back to chimp and start, you know, I like to put little stars on ones right away. And I captured nothing because for whatever reason, when I was in pro capture, I had the frickin' frame limiter set to 50 frames. So I'm mashing the shutter button, but it's not doing anything. It's not taking one picture. Oh. So the only thing I got was a couple of frames of them coming out of the water. I'll see if I can find those. I got a couple of frames of them coming out of the water, then nothing. And everything was, it was the most, I was like, and I had the right shutter speed and I had the right exposure. I had everything was just perfect. And somehow I had the frame limiter set on my frickin' program. I don't know if that's a default setting or something. I don't know how I missed that in my settings, because I was trying to change over to going full manual and doing the highlight metering. So I rearranged all the settings in the camera. I'm so mad at myself. And by then we were about ready to leave, so I didn't get an opportunity to, because then I was like, gee, I was so mad. I turned the Pro Capture frame counter off. I was so mad. Okay, while it's pulling up in DxO, Paul says, I'm loving the 25 megapixel of my G9 files are 40 megabytes each. Yes. And what camera store, Rob? Oh, District Camera here in Burke. And Adam says, I understand OM system focusing just pictures. Oh, I lost it. Hold on. Wow, I got a lot of chat here I need to catch up with. So Adam says, I understand OM focusing just pictures and not video, but they did it so well on the M1 Mark II and III and then gave up. Happy to see them starting to market street with the OM3. Yes. Yeah, the video side, they're going to have to bump up their megapixels so they can do like 5.7K open gate, like the G9 Mark II. G9 Mark II is an amazing video camera as well. Really think they need a hybrid to excite new users. Yep, I agree. And the Estonian says, ask Canon or Sony, the R1 and R3 are both 24 megapixels and famed A7S III is only 12. Megapixels are important to the extent and for only specific needs. Yes. So that's right. The R3 is a 24 megapixel full frame. The A7S III, yeah, that's a video-centric camera. So that, Panasonic did that, right, with the GH5S. They have a 12 megapixel Micro Four Thirds sensor that they brought out. I don't know why they don't continue to do that. Come out with low resolution sensors specifically for videographers. I think a GH5S, like a new version of that, would be nice. And Thomas says, listening to Rob while watching US Canada gold medal hockey. Nice. And I think the Panasonic bump was for video codecs. It was nice sensor, but no one needs 40. Ask Fuji. It makes you older glass strobo, and for what purpose? Yeah, so like I was saying early on, more megapixels, other than for video, like if you want 8K video, you really need a 40 megapixel sensor. I think 33 is kind of the minimum to get all of the pixels, but you need a little bit of wiggle room for image stabilization, right? So you need to be at 40 megapixels for 8K video, and that's what they were aiming for. So yeah, the more megapixels is two things, right? There's no practical reason, right? Other than agency, like Jimmy Chang is saying, his agencies can't take less than 24 megapixels. But so that's part of it. But I think more so the perception of new buyers that more megapixels means is a newer camera, better technology, whatever. However false that is, that perception is wrong. And then also for the videography side, right? If you want to advertise 8K video, you want to check another box, you need a 40 megapixel sensor. And Darko, good to see you. And Daniel says, what a load of rubbish. Are you really going to constantly showing ads during live stream? I can hardly believe it. Yes. So I tried to run the ads, the live stream without ads, right? I did that for 2 months without ads. And, I don't make that much money. In fact, I've never broken $1,000 on YouTube, ever. Typically, it's around $500 a month. But I stopped ads for 2 months on Livestream and asked for donations and memberships and things like that instead to support the live streams, right? And my revenue dropped another 20%. So if I could do it for free, I would, but I cannot. I have to make something while I'm here, right? Otherwise, I could be out shooting in the rain right now. And I love everyone here, and I love chatting with you guys. But ultimately, I gotta make a few bucks. Like my last live stream, I made $6. But you multiply that out times 3 times a week, 4 times, 4 weeks a month. That's an extra couple $100, and that's half of the money I get from YouTube. The other half I get from the normal videos, the reviews that I do on gear that I get in. So that's just how it is for me. I'm sorry. Not that I should be sorry, right? But I'm sorry I can't do it. I wish I could. Okay, so good morning, Marco. Good to see you. And Darko says, for 2026, I think I'll be doing more wildlife as I find I'm getting bored with street photography. Okay, wildlife's a lot of fun. It's definitely definitely takes a different skill set though. And Adam says, and do an EP pen, not the EPL line. Yeah, like an EP8, right? And Thomas says, before I forget to mention it, great job with 2 Micro Four Thirds meetups. Thank you as always for arranging and hosting the events. Informative and entertaining sessions for the panel. Oh, thanks. So yeah, I love bringing everybody together and just bringing the community together on this side of the table, right? On this side of the screen. Because I want to emphasize that we are a community and we are stronger together as creators and photographers than we are if everyone was trying to separate. Because how often do you see like the other channels bring other creators together, right? You'll see the one-off time to time, right? But I like to do it as much as I can. In fact, for March, I'm planning another meetup. Okay, it's not going to be like the annual Micro Four Thirds meetup, but I'm going to bring in some new faces. Like the couple of people that couldn't make it, Ali O'Keefe and Dax Smith, right, from OM Systems, and Maddie. I'm going to try to get all 3 of them together. I'm still trying to arrange a date that we can do that. March is a little bit busier month for me, so it's a little bit trickier. But so I'm going to try and do that for next month and get a couple more guests maybe. But maybe 3 is enough for something like that. And we're not going to focus on Micro Four Thirds like we did, the last 2. We're going to talk about, a wider range of camera gear and photography. So anyhow, you can, come on, chat window just flies up on me. You can get the pen price down without the EVF, yes. And on the AI side, have the AI more readily find to connect to my cell phone and OM Share app. Yeah, the app actually with OM Systems is pretty good. I can't tell you, well, I'm not going to talk about apps other than I tried to use the Lumix app and it was painful. It was painful to use the Lumix app, but I was trying to do it on my LX100 Mark II. So maybe because it's just an older camera that it kept disconnecting, and even when it was connected, things were very sluggish and I couldn't figure out where to slide and swipe things. I was really struggling with it. Whereas the OM Share app, it connects very easily to my OM3 and OM1. I can get to all the different settings pretty straightforward. but I'm not really an app guy. You know, if things change a little bit for me from away from something I'm used to, you know, it's kind of a struggle for me. And EVF on the EP8, I doubt it. I doubt it. Then it would be a Pen F. And pen cams would need EVF for me to buy back into the Ollie/OM if Panny makes a rangefinder system like GX Periscope up EVF. That would be cool. Oh yeah. You know, I'm an EVF guy. I gotta have an EVF. I'll make exceptions for like cameras like a TG7, or I've been running this Insta360 camera. And yes, the meetups were terrific. And Eric, oh, Eric's here. Hi, Eric. If I was OM, I'd start labeling lenses to their actual focal length, 75 portrait lens instead of 150 portrait lens, so newcomers would see the benefit. It's not deceptive. It's very confusing to beginners. You know, labeling things 75 or 150 or back and forth, right? It's confusing to beginners anyway. You know, if they're already doing their due diligence and hearing things online, on YouTube, for example, 85 is a portrait, 50 is sort of an everyday lens, 35 is your street lens, you know, 28. And then they go to Micro Four Thirds, and all of a sudden you see 14, 17, 25, 75. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, there's some confusion. I think it's going to be confusing either way. If they label them as they are, this is a 35 on a Micro Four Thirds, or just say this is a 17 for Micro Four Thirds, right? That, you know, they're going to have to rely on the sales rep in the store to help them buy their lenses. If they're buying the stuff online, say Amazon or B&H or whatever, yeah, they're gonna have to do a little bit of work before they spend a couple $1,000 on a camera. And Daniel, try to be polite if you don't want to. Oh, okay. Let's see. It's fine. I mean, I understand the frustration. I'm very content with ads because then I can watch everything for free. I'm very, very happy with that model. In fact, like with Netflix, you know, I pay half as much because I don't want to spend the extra $10 to get ad free. So I get the ones with the ads, and I only pay like $7 a month now. So imagine that, you pay $7 a month and you still have to watch ads. But I don't want to spend $17 or $18, right? Because it takes me a couple hours to make like $10. Please remember to hit the like button. Oh, thank you. And consider becoming a member. It's only 99 cents. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And yes, an OM20, please, and sell it for like 500. Yes, that would be awesome. Man, I just don't know if they have the bandwidth to do both. Like do a $500 camera and an EP8 and a new TG8. Like 3 cameras all at once. That would be huge. And Marco says, I hope Rob shows more ads and be compensated for all the work that he does for the community. Good. Don't give Daniel a hard time about that. I know where he's coming from, and I get it. It's not a big deal. I just hope you can stay through the ads with us and be part of the community. Because we need as many as we can get, right? We're stronger together. And oh, Marco, David and I, we got your box of Godox flashes. So thank you so much for that. David really appreciates it. If you haven't got his email yet, but he ended up keeping the V1 and the TT685, and the good trigger, and I took the two little triggers. I'm just gonna keep one in my car. Can never have enough backups, right, for triggers, because I do events and things sometimes. I got one coming up this week, actually, on Thursday. I'm going to do an event. So I'm going to bring my OM3 with my Godox Luxmaster, you know, my vintage setup. But I'm also going to bring all my other lighting and use my 12 to 45 Pro and the 35 to 100. And those will be my two lenses. I might bring two bodies so I don't have to swap lenses. That's a little bit of a hassle. And Adam says, lean in on making the film and color adjustments easy. Spend time on the phone app, make a tab, and let those that want to do the color wheel stuff on the phone and then push it to the camera. That's a good idea. Yeah. And Darko says, Rob, with Viltrox, do they do micro four thirds lenses? If not, they're primed with rock on OM rangefinder. Yeah. They don't have any micro four thirds lenses that I'm aware of. Not autofocus anyway. And Darko says, I'm hoping, but I'm sure it will never happen, a Z30 with an EVF. No, that's the Z50. But a Z30, I guess you want to go for the rangefinder style Z30 and add an EVF. And Adam says, at Johnny Young, I think, oh, sorry, that's not for me. And are you stirring some Maxwell House? No, matcha tea. I'm a big fan of matcha tea now. I just discovered it just like a couple of weeks ago or last month, whatever. I'm like in love with it. You know, it tastes like tea, a little thicker and grittier, but the benefits of it, right? Just having this long-term sort of alertness instead of like the ups and downs with coffee. You know, I would drink coffee, I'd be up and then I'd crash. But with matcha tea, it just kind of brings me up a little bit and just stays steady for the whole day just about. Yep, you got it right, matcha. That's why I have to keep stirring it because, you know, the what they do is they grind up tea leaves into a powder. So it's basically green tea leaves powdered, and you drop it in directly without the bag, so you get everything in, the full benefit of the green tea. 20 megapixels on my Z52 is super capable. Yes. Yeah, the Nikon 20s are very impressive. It was great. I remember when it came out on the D500. I wanted that camera so bad. But $2,000 for an APS-C camera back then seemed stupid. That's what everybody was saying, right? But yeah. And the OM3 or OM5 Mark II is so underrated. It's such a fun. It is. It is such a good camera. If they were open today, I'd probably just take my EM5 Mark III and trade it right now. Because it is much more capable than my EM5 Mark III. I mean, everybody poo-poos on that camera as just a minor update to the EM5 Mark III, but it's pretty substantial. The things that it can do over, you know, the responsiveness and performance of the camera is significantly improved with the new processor. The autofocus is better, certainly with face detect is way better, and then the additional computational and video specs that they have, plus the USB-C port. So all of these things make it a really, really nice upgrade that if I can get a couple $100 for my EM5 Mark III, and the OM5 Mark II is on sale for $100 off right now. We're talking maybe $600-700, maybe $800 that I'd have to spend to get it. That's worth it to me. And then I have a really cool sand beige. I don't know. We'll see. Because I looked at, while I was there, I looked at the Nikon ZF. They have it in silver now, which is, you know, I just like silver cameras. A lot of people prefer black. I like black too. Like the OM1 is awesome in black. The M5 III is awesome in black. I prefer it over the silver. But the sand beige trumps it all. I'm just worried they're going to come out with a new EP8 And you know, if they come out with an EP8 or a TG8 this year, I would almost rather have one of those than an OM5 Mark II, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm very flaky. I also looked at the XM5 while I was there, and I looked at, so yeah, the ZF and the XM5. Those are the two, because I really like the 26 megapixel sensor of the Fujis. You know, the 40 megapixel I have in the one I have now is okay, but I really liked the 26. That was perfect. And the old E1 has 5 megapixel and looks great. Dang it. Yes, I agree. I'm happy with my EM10 Mark II with 16. Yeah, the EM10 Mark II is you know, mine finally died on me. But that has got to be the best camera they've ever made. You know, from a lot of different perspectives, right? It was priced right. It was extremely capable, had everything in it that you could want with only a few compromises. Like, it didn't have built-in focus stacking. But a lot of times, you know, you end up stacking on your computer anyway, right? So that's not a big miss, but it had so many things in it that they kind of stripped away with the Mark III and IV. And they're only missed by people that are true enthusiasts for the OM System Olympus cameras, right? But yeah, that's why I never bought the Mark III or the Mark IV. Is, you know, for a little more, I got the EM5 Mark III and the EM5 Mark II. And Silver Halid says, but don't OM customers also like the computational features a lot? Would OM system be able to maintain those at higher megapixel count sensors? Yeah. They would just need to update the processing, right? They would just need more processing power. Or if they don't upgrade the processor, things would just slow down a bit. Because when we went from the EM1 Mark II, even the EM1, I think, yeah, the EM1 Mark II to the EM1 Mark III, the high-res shot mode was 2 or 3 times faster because of the new processor. So if they get another processor out that can process faster, I mean, that would be nice. If an EP8 comes out and it has a new processor in it that shows off, you know, the performance and capability of what this new processor can do in higher range models, that would be definitely a big boost. And Michael's here. Good to see you, Michael. And let's see. Why are your Tuesday streams not available for watching later days? It should be up. I'm getting hits to it. I don't know why you can't see it. It should be up. And hi all, audio is it is a little bit low, isn't it? I'm sorry. Let me see if I can dial that up. Is that, oh, that's even lower, isn't it? So that's max. Let me try one other thing. Let me go into my filters. The gain. It is weird. Why is the audio low? I'll just crank it up just another 2 decibels. How's that? It's strange. Unless it's the Windows mic settings. Let me check. Mic. Now I'm going to be clipping. So I turned the Windows mic setting was really low. about the, oh. Let me check that. How's the level? Oh, still too hot. How about now? It's a little bit hot. Turn it down. Okay. That should be about right. It's a little bit hot. Turn it down. All right. That should be just about right. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Okay. Looking at that lens makes my neck really hurt. Yeah. Yeah, it's no joke. It's a heavy lens. You have to be committed. Yeah, the lens is massive. My mind would love to have longer reach, but my hands and shoulders say, well, are you crazy? Yeah. It's no joke, definitely. Okay, and I need to get through the chat here. You should try the old Zuiko Digital 300 2.8. Works great with both teleconverters and micro four thirds to micro four thirds adapter, but about two. Yeah, I've seen that lens on eBay. But I think, you know, if it's like, because I have the 50 to 200, right? The old 4/3 version. Fabulous lens. But you lose the subject detect with it. And I really want to have that if I'm going to be using 300 millimeters. Refinance your place to get the lens. Man, it wouldn't be a refinance, but yeah, that's what it would take. The reach size range ratio worth the trade-off to me. 300 to 1200 field of view with decent light stabilization and weather sealing gathering isn't bad at all. Yeah, I agree. I agree. The 150 to 600, this massive lens, you know, I got the lens hood on it, but you got to have, let me take this off real quick. I mean, you guys have seen this 1,000 times, right? I'm still not, but it goes all the way out. But I could manage it. I think I can manage it. Like I said, I got to try again with just this strap and see how it goes. If I go to Conowingo or something where I'm on a pier the whole time, then monopod with a gimbal. But I think in the field, like Huntley Meadows, I can manage this. Decent light gathering, okay. I found the best way to use the 150 to 600 is lying down on the ground. Much easier to stabilize. It's a beast to use when it's windy. Oh, yeah, if it's windy, like tonight is supposed to be, like I said, really, really, really windy tonight and tomorrow most of the day. Yeah, I could see that being a problem. And it says, I tried Lee's method yesterday too. It was awkward as I had to think and react to each set of shots, but I got the best results I've had when it was overcast. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'm gonna keep practicing. Like I said, I need to get out there more. And at our local shop, there's an F-mount 500 PF lens for 2,100 bucks Canadian. Made me want laugh out loud, but Mommy, aka my wife, says, nah, yeah. That's one of the things, you know, being single is I'm only accountable to myself, you know. I have to, yeah, anyway. It's pros and cons to being single. So the 150 to 600 seems like a great winter birding lens with all the waterfowl that like to keep their distance. Mergansers, buffleheads, ring, yes. The shovelers, yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome to have that 600 millimeter reach. It's pretty substantial. I mean, I have an example here. This is part of my test shot thing. So the one on the left is 429 millimeters. So I was trying to mimic my 300 f4 with teleconverter. But that's 429 millimeters on the left, and the right is 600 millimeters. And if we zoom in, let me enlarge this size to be the same. You can definitely get more detail. You know, look at the seeds in here versus the seeds over here. They're a little bit soft because, you know, and this has these have been run through DxO, by the way. So there's a little bit of sharpening going on. But you can see, you know, the contrast is better. The are they the same exposure exactly? Yeah, 1006.2. Yeah, pretty much the same exposure. And yeah, it's so much better to be able to zoom in. And you know, like if you look at this Phillips head over here, it's very, very soft with some chromatic aberrations here. And over here, it's much cleaner. So that surprised me a little, that the lens seems to be sharper or better zoomed all the way out to 600 millimeters. So I need to do some more testing. But yeah, you can see the grooves in the sunflower seed here and here, whereas over here it's just soft. And you know, when you look at a normal viewing distance, they both look pretty good. But this one is, it can make a big difference. Like, let's go over here to the wood. It's pretty much on the same focal plane. This is my little bird feeder in the back. Not quite. It's not quite on the same focal plane. It looks like this. It looks sharper here on the left. But this was just a quick and dirty test. I was mainly looking at the difference in the focal length between the two. Great pics. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Man, those are some good looking shots. Oh, I appreciate that. And another one. Great pics. Thank you. Thank you. And hello from New York. Please help me understand the differences, benefits, and cons of 8, 10, 12-bit cameras. Why are all your photos in Fastone Viewer listed in 24-bit color? Thank you. You know, I don't know why it says. Let me see. JPEG 24-bit. That's interesting. I never noticed that. But I'll just give you a quick, you know, this is a little bit outside of my scope of knowledge, okay? But think of 8, 10, 12-bit as sort of resolution, right? And if you have 8 bits, you have potential for, I think it works out to like 16 million colors, right? And going to 10-bit is another number much higher than going to 12 bits even higher. But it's a good way to think of it is if you take a picture of a sky, right, just a clear blue sky, and you process that image in 8 bits, there's a lot of potential for what they call banding, where you'll see the steps of shading, right? Like it'll be kind of a dark blue here, and then you'll see some pixelation, and then the next step it'll be a little bit lighter blue, and then you go up a little higher in the sky where it's brightest, and it'll be another shade of blue, and you'll see 3 distinct bands of blue. sort of a darker blue, a middle blue, and then kind of a light blue at the top. That's very, very common when you're processing an 8-bit. You can see this kind of banding. And when you go to 10 bits or 12 bits, the number of colors you can show is much higher. So instead of going in steps like we did with 8-bit, you now have enough colors, because in 8-bit, the reason it steps like that, because it doesn't have a shade of blue between the first band and the second band, and then the third band. You go to 10-bit or 12-bit, because 10-bit is more common in video. A lot of normal cameras can do 10-bit video, right? You get some magnitude. You know, it goes from like 16 million to 200 million, whatever that number is, but it's a pretty substantial leap in the number of shades of colors that you can represent on the screen. So you have sort of this dark blue, and then it gradually shifts. It graduates very nicely from a dark blue to the light blue, and you don't get that banding with 10 or 12-bit. Certainly not in 12-bit. Now, there's another scale. It's sort of along the lines of the luminance, but in the darker areas, like in the shadows, going from black to a lighter shade of gray to white, right? So you got 3 bands there. You gain a little bit more as you get more bits, right? So that's the best I can explain it. Beyond that, it's a little bit beyond me. Exactly the technical things. And there's videos on it on YouTube going from 8-bit to 10-bit to 12-bit. It's mostly video centric related, but it applies to photography as well, just regular images. And our Micro Four Thirds cameras at this point process in 12-bit. You know, with the exception of the high-res shot mode, some of the cameras are 14-bit. So you get a little bit more detail in the shadows with the 14-bit resolution. So that's kind of the difference, right? Is how many shades of blue or how many shades of a color can you show at the same time? And if that transition is very gradual, you may not be able to represent all of those shades of colors with a lower bit like 8-bit. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, and the reason Fastone Viewer is showing 24-bit color, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. So what was the method you were trying? What Lehoy recommended? How did you set up the OM3? So the idea is you shoot in full manual and you turn the highlight, you know, you have a highlight and shadow blinkies, right? It'll blink red or it'll blink blue for shadows. And when it's blinking red, you've overexposed and you're now clipping completely to white in the highlights. And if you see blue, you're completely clipping to blue in the shadows, or to black in the shadow areas. So you have no dynamic range, nothing to recover. The data is basically, there's no data there. So you turn that indicator on. And then you simply adjust your ISO back and forth manually to get within the range of, you know, so that you're not getting any blinkies, right? You're not blinking red. Basically, he's looking for red, I think, that so you don't clip the highlights. So as long as you're not clipping the highlights, you're basically exposing as far to the right as possible on a histogram. So if you're not sure what that means, you know, there's lots of videos on that. But you want to get as much data out of the shadow areas and get as much light into the lens as possible via the ISO. Now, technically, ISO does not gather more light. It's simply amplifying the signal that's already there. But by maximizing the exposure so that most of the light is in the upper side of the histogram, you can recover more data. Because you can shoot very high ISO images with very little noise if there's enough light, right? The only time you really see noise in high ISO shots is when you try to recover shadows. And that's where, you know, going to 14 or 16 bit like in medium format cameras might help in the shadow areas. But that's the idea, I believe. Adjusting, if you want to adjust for actual light, you know, it's going to be shutter speed and aperture. Those things actually bring more light into the sensor, using a slower shutter speed or using a wider aperture if possible, or a lower f-stop number. Those actually bring more light into the sensor, but normally when you're birding, like birds in flight, you're pretty much wide open all the time, so nothing to do with the aperture. You're at f6.3, for example, on this 150 to 600. You can't go any wider like f5.6 or f4. You're stuck. Shutter speed, you're also kind of stuck because you want to maintain a fast enough shutter speed to overcome motion blur, either through hand holding because it's such a long focal length, and motion blur of the subject because the subject's moving very fast, like flapping their wings. So I'm probably going a little bit deeper beyond what you need to know. You probably know all this stuff, but like this was shot at 1/640th of a second, and you can see the wings are all blurry. And this bird was just taking off, so his wings aren't moving that fast yet. As opposed to, where's another one? He's just kind of gliding. As opposed to like this shot here, right? This shot here is at 1/4000th of a second. Now this is a much smaller bird, so there's still a little bit of motion blur in the wings. So these birds and hummingbirds, you really should be like 1/6000th of a second. But I had to kind of pay attention because look at my ISO, I'm at 12,800. But anyway, I think that was the idea. Was I'll have to watch the stream again just to make sure, or go to Lee's channel and watch his videos about it. But I think that's what he's doing, is he's just adjusting the ISO so that it's at the, you know, at the range that's not clipping highlights. So I have someone selling the 150 to 400 for 6,200. Tempted to sell the 150 to 600 and 300 f4 and go for it. My wife would murder me though when she'd notice the white lens. Well, Marco, I'll tell you the same thing you always tell me, right? If it brings you a little bit of happiness, just do it. You know. Now on the other hand, everyone tells me the 300 f4 is just as sharp as the 150 to 400. So when I slap my 1.4 teleconverter on it, I'm pretty much there. I know the 150 to 400 can go to 500 millimeters on its own, and then you can put a teleconverter on top of that. But you could do it. You could be almost there. If you sell those two lenses, you'd be about $3,000 to $4,000 closer, right? Of course, the way you sell stuff so cheap. If you do want to sell it, Marco, just let the group know here in the chat section. I'm sure there'll be buyers for both. Heck, I might buy your 150 to 600. I don't know. And Captain Haddock says, you and Robin Wong have so much more wildlife than I have in Scotland, but we have puffin colony. Yeah, you guys have puffins, okay? But then, you know, I'm jealous of places like Costa Rica, right? Where I see these amazing birds. A lot of amazing birds in Costa Rica. And Michael said, Rob, I was taking a stab at whale photography yesterday. Quite a learning experience. Pro capture mode of the Oman Mark II makes all the difference. Yes. And this is interesting. I wonder why this is in a different color on my window here. But anyway, Ethan says, a question for when there's time. I'm having a hard time understanding what the new TG7 is able to do. Can it be used with microscope objectives directly? No, you have to buy an adapter. I think the adapter will work with the TG7. They have some microscope adapter. But if you go to Olympus's or OM Systems website, they have something on it. Maybe I can find it real quick. Yeah, it's here. I got it. In fact, I will give you my affiliate link. Speaking of making a couple bucks. It's called where's, yeah, microscope TG7. Okay, it's this thing here. Because the TG7 has a mount on it that you can attach things to, accessories to. So this is just another accessory. It's called the NYTG5 or TGV. $1,700. Wow. They're not kidding around, are they? Wow, I didn't know it was that much. But there you go. That answers the question anyway. Going back to the 14th, anyone has setting suggestion for Oman Mark II in a 75 to 300? It really wouldn't be any different than, if you're talking about birding, it's no different than any other telephoto lens. My default setting, until I develop a new workflow that Lee and others have talked about, is shutter priority 1/2000th of a second, auto ISO, and then SH2 50 or 25 frames per second. That's kind of my default setting, and then I'll raise or lower the shutter speed depending on what the subject is doing. So if it's a bird on a stick, I might drop down to even as low as 1/640th of a second. If it's a bird in flight, if it's a normal sized bird like a duck or an egret or any kind of raptor, 1/2000th of a second. Eagles. If they're smaller birds like backyard birds, cardinals, sparrows, 1/4000th. Hummingbirds like 1/6000th of a second. And that's how I used to shoot all the time. Shutter priority that way. And that was the easiest one. And then I would dial in exposure comp based on what the subject looked like. So if the subject had white feathers and any other color feather, like a great blue heron has a white strip of feathers right around his eyes, right? But then the rest of them is kind of this shade of blue. I always clipped the whites unless I dial in exposure compensation. If we're talking about like an egret, which is an all-white bird, I used to dial in like -2, sometimes -3 exposure compensation, depending on what the background is. If the background's very dark, then I definitely had to dial in negative exposure comp, like -3. If the egret was flying, then maybe a -2. But yeah, egrets I had to dial in a lot. So I'm trying to work out this new, using the highlight indicators method, and I should get better results once my brain gets rewired a little bit. And Adam says, Rob, bought that silly little Godox IT32 just to have something for my Fuji. Now bought the base for the OM cameras as well. So easy to pull off the camera off, not have to fiddle to make it work. Yes, it's very straightforward. The only catch is on, I don't have the Fuji one, but on OM systems, if you want to do focus bracketing and stacking or high-res shot mode with the flash, you need to put in like a 1 second delay, interval between shots to get the flash to recycle fast enough. If you're at any power higher than 1/32 power, if you're like a 1/64 or something, you'll be okay. But if you're like a 1/32, you risk getting a black frame or several black frames. Certainly a 1/16 power, you're going to get some black frames. So just set it to 1 second, or maybe a little shorter if it's available. I can't remember. Yeah, you can do shorter than 1 second, but just keep that in mind for focus stacking, bracketing, and high-res shot mode. Yes, a Pro 500 f5.6. That would be nice. Sigma has one, right? For other mounts. They could adapt that to Micro Four Thirds. That would be nice. And Mark says, I lost all respect for Jimmy after his most recent rant when he called OM video. Yeah. After years of raving now, it's, yeah. You know, don't apologize for RR. Okay. Wow, I'm way behind on the chat. You know, I cut Jimmy a lot of slack even for saying something like that, or a lot of flack. Or I cut Jimmy a lot of slack. Anyway, I don't fault him for saying that too much. And, you know, we've all said things, whether it's related to cameras or not, but we've all said things in our past that we regret or kind of overstated something. You know, I've done that a couple times. Like, I was talking about the Fuji X70, I think, camera. And they're asking like $1,000 for that camera. And I said, that camera's crap. I shouldn't have said it like that. I mean, it's a great little camera, right? The old X70. And I would love to have one. I ain't paying $1,000 for one. But my emotion on that statement was directed at the prices they were asking for it, not the camera itself. But the word came out, the way it came out was the X70 is a piece of crap. And it's really not. It's the price that they want, that they're asking for that camera is where my anger and language should have went towards, not to the camera itself. So that's just kind of one example that I've said things like that. And I think when Jimmy was doing his rant, you know, it just kind of comes out like his frustration is not that the video is crap on, or, you know, shit on OMC. I think the video is great on these cameras, honestly. I mean, I'm not a hardcore videographer either, but you know, I cut him a little slack on that statement because I know where he's coming from. And I think his anger and frustration is probably directed towards them not doing anything, like someone said earlier, since the EM1 Mark II. What have they really done for video since then? Not much. Very, very minor things. But nothing significantly image quality wise, right? 4K 60, that's it. When you look at what Panasonic has been doing forever, has been making amazing video cameras with the same sensor. You know what I mean? So, you know, like the GH5, amazing video camera. And same sensor that basically they're using in the OM system cameras. And you can't compare the two. The GH5 is way better video cameras. So I think that's kind of where, because he, he uses a GH6 and a GH7. I don't know. He uses Panasonic cameras for video. And certainly the G9 Mark I had amazing video capability. Same sensors in our cameras. Anyway, so I don't take his rants quite as literal as, because I've done the same thing. I've said the same thing about stuff when I really my anger and my frustration is more directed at something kind of tangent to the actual subject, right? And I think that's kind of where he was in that video. But I don't know why I'm defending Jimmy. Jimmy can defend himself. But I still like Jimmy. I have YouTube Premium, only thing I subscribe to, no ads. I thought about it sometimes, but then I was like, death by 1,000 cuts, man. Just how many $7, $10 services are we going to need? So I'm more willing to have the ad to support Rob. He's so generous with his time. And oh, thank you, Heather. And paint the lens, Marco. Send it to me and I'll do it for you. Okay, I'm not sure what that was about. You guys are trouble. And Anthony says, I'd like to see OM System partner with Sigma and modify the 500. Yeah, maybe they are. I don't know. Because the Sigma 500, let's see how much that's selling for. Selling for $3,200, $3,300. So it's going to be like $5,000 at least if OM System makes it. But that might be worth it, because that's still $3,000-$4,000 less than the 150 to 400. I think if they come out with the 500 f5.6, I bet it'll be around $5,000. Or if they push it, $59.99. And I did use double blocks, but pay Rob for his content. Oh, thank you. And I have the feeling we will see EPS style camera before we see a new Pen F. Yes, I agree. Awesome. Glad you guys could use them at Rob Trek. After the IT32 and V480, fell in love with the smaller gear and would never use a V1 or 860. Yeah. You're talking about mostly on camera type photography, but the V1 is really good as an off-camera flash, like in a light modifier too. It has just enough power. So does the V480, for all intents and purposes. Use my Z30 for video only. It's okay. Okay. APS-C or Micro Four Thirds gets people confused, but when you say you get more reach, technically the light bulb goes on. Okay. In UK, Maxwell House is trash. Probably Maxwell House is exactly the same here, but I've said this before. Maxwell House is kind of like raw, and then all these gourmet coffees, those are kind of like the JPEGs. I kind of like the raw taste of Maxwell House, just like kind of this raw taste of matcha tea. It's about as raw as you can get if you want to talk about tea, right? Just something about it. If you pay the extra $10, you have an extra 20 hours a week rather than watching the ads. That crossed my mind, how much time I would save. So I make up for it by playing all the videos at 1.5x. As much as I can. Some people talk too fast, or their accent's a little thick and I can't play it at 1.5. But I play most of the videos on YouTube at 1.5x. Then the commercials feel twice as long, but it's okay. I'm keeping my $10. Maybe they'll come out with a sand beige OM3. Wow. I don't think that would look good in an OM3. I think people want a black OM3. I'm definitely seeing a lot of comments about that. And if they come out with a sand beige OM3, they better not call it sand beige. They better call it like champagne or desert storm or something. Something, a really good name. How can they call something sand beige? How boring can you get with such a cool little camera when it comes to naming something? Wow. So what would the new Pen F need to be a Pen F for those that revere the camera? Construction, metal, rangefinder. I think they can just keep everything exactly the same. Build quality, materials used, size, weight. If they can keep that exactly the same but update the inside to what the OM3 has, they would have a winner. I used OM10 in the 80s, then got the EM5 Mark II. Okay. OM10 was basically the auto film camera, right, from Olympus. The EM5 Mark II is a fabulous camera, though. Really good. In practice, though, I think the EM10 Mark II is a better camera than the EM5 Mark II was for in terms of functionality. The problem with the EM5 Mark II was the buffer for continuous shooting was really bad, like 2-3 frames, as opposed to you get like 10 frames on an EM10 Mark II. Don't quote me on these numbers, but that and the EM10 Mark II also solved the shutter shock problem. Now they added anti-shock with a firmware update for the EM5 Mark II, but that didn't really solve the problem completely, the shutter shock problem. When you're below like 1/300th of a second, you get shutter shock on telephoto lenses. Use a volume increaser. Oh, no, yeah. Sorry, that was reference to earlier. Past live streams now take about 13 hours before the chat pops up. YouTube needs to work on that. For a while, they had it down to 2. So that's why I put the chat up directly in the stream, because it'll always be there. Because sometimes I go back and edit out parts of the stream, and then the chat vanishes. But also having it right here, the chat stays, is available immediately on the rewatch. That sounds just right. So hopefully I got the audio just right. It looks right on the meter anyway. Does OM1 Mark II have dual processors? No. It has one processor that's quad core. So the processor itself is divided into multiple cores. But there's not 2 separate processors. So technically, no. Practically, yes. Because the single processor chip has multiple cores, which makes it a multi-core processor. Huge. The processor itself is quad. Yep. And did you buy anything at the camp? I did not. I restrained from buying anything. I'm honestly right now, I'd almost rather have this lens for $2,000 than buy a Nikon ZF. That's what I'm feeling. But we'll see. Time will tell. I'm going to use this for a little while, for as long as David let me keep it, and see what I can do with it, and then I'll make a decision. Like 8-bit and 16-bit video games, yep. Better color resolution, yep. More shades of color. Hopefully I explained that that way. No, I have not used the 150 to 600. I just got it yesterday, so I haven't done a whole lot with it. I just had that little 2-3 hour stint yesterday of the birding. I'll say things like that. I take it with a grain of salt. Yep. Hi Rob, follow-up question about photo color depth. The OM cameras have graduated command in the menu while Lumix does not. What is OM photo graduation used for? Oh, it's the ND filter. So if you have a landscape, right, and let's say there's a horizon, above the horizon is a bright sky, below the horizon is your landscape or seascape, right? It's usually much darker. So if you take a picture, sometimes you have to pick one. You have to choose, do I want to expose for the highlights and save all the cloud detail and the colors in the cloud, like at a sunset or sunrise? But then usually the foreground or the landscape is underexposed and it's going to be grainy if you try to recover. So what a lot of people do is they just do exposure bracketing and then do exposure blending in post or HDR, either way. With a graduated filter, you can gradually darken the top part of the sky, the top part of the frame, and it's adjustable. You can slant it, put it at different angles. But anyway, let's talk about a level horizon. You can bring the sky down darker and then expose for the foreground. Actually, the camera automatically does that. It'll automatically expose for whatever and graduation filter you use. You can use up to an 8-stop graduated ND filter. So it gradually darkens the top as it goes down. So if you look up graduated ND filter, I can do it real quick. So this is what they look like, something like this. That was a nice picture there. So the idea is you make this part darker. You make this part darker so that this part gets exposed properly. That's the idea, because otherwise this could be overexposed or this would be underexposed. You know, a lot of times in landscapes you have to pick your battles or do exposure bracketing, but with an ND filter you can capture it in one shot. Okay. I think Jimmy is frustrated, as some of us are, that we need different camera for video. Yes, exactly. Pen f20 megapixel and 1080p, rubbish, really. Yeah, based on today's standards, but even back then, I think the GX8, which was kind of in that same year, was still a much better camera, technically, than the Pen F ever was. And I love you chatting, Rob. Oh, thank you. OM won't do anything for the big anniversary. I'm betting OM3 in the... Whoops, I lost it. In the TI version. Oh, titanium, you mean? That would be kind of cool. I still think they need a black one, though, before they come out with titanium. Titanium, for those of you, you know, it's kind of an off-white, kind of a gray color with a hint of gold. At least the ones I've seen. I read a thing a while back that 1080 is all the rage amongst the lounging. It's supposedly making a big comeback. Yeah, 1080p for life, man. I'm not a big fan of 4K. It's just really hard to work with. A new pen would have to come as twins, a color and mono version, or all in black. OM3 monochrome gases. Yeah. Man, an OM3 monochrome. That would be freaking awesome. Take my money. Yeah, lounging equal younger. Yep, I assumed that. Ooh, just came back and the audio now works for me. Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry, it was very low before. That was my bad. Rob, do you think the new M-Zuiko 100 to 400 Mark II is also a good? Yeah, it's an excellent lens. I've seen that on sale for $1,000, but I think it's normally you're gonna have to pay $1,500. I would recommend just get the previous version. I don't see a reason to pay $500 more for the new one. Supposedly the Sync IS is better, and maybe some new coatings, but optically it's the same thing in terms of sharpness and everything else, aberrations. And the reason I say this, okay, so Sync IS is not a big deal. when you're shooting birds in flight, for example, you know, you're at 1/2000th of a second or faster typically, and image stabilization is almost irrelevant at that point. I've shot many shots with image stabilization turned off at 1/2000th, and because you just don't need it. Now, for video work, you might want to get the Mark II version, right? If you plan on filming birds in flight, which is really awesome. I'd love to be able to do that. I'm gonna try with this lens because it has the Sync IS. But yeah, then I would say get the Mark II if you want to do video of birds in flight, because then your frame rates are like 1/60th of a second, right? You're definitely gonna need image stabilization. Time to replenish your Dominican coffee, yes. To carry the MZeeker 150 to 600, maybe you can use the cotton carrier. I've seen that. Let me just look at it one more time. I mean, I don't own this lens yet, so yeah, that's the big harness thing. So my friend who passed away, Ben, he had one of these, and he would carry his OM1 with the 150 to 400 right there on the front, right? So just so you guys know what we're talking about, it's this big harness thing, right? But in the back, there's a little pocket, right? Yeah, this backstash pocket. What he did is he put a counterweight in the back to offset the weight in the front, and that balanced it much better. But at the time, Ben was hardcore. He was fit. I mean, that guy was strong. He could carry all that weight at the same time. Counterweight, the harness weighs something, plus the camera and lens. I don't know if I could manage that. But I will say this. It makes a lot of sense to do it that way, like you're suggesting with this cotton cage thing, because you're really not going to shoot with any other lens while you're out in the field when you got one of these big lenses on. So just being able to just snap it there and take it out when you need it without worrying about straps like a rapid strap, which can be cumbersome, especially when you're trying to get low to the water. You know, my strap always falls into the water and gets soaked, you know. So something like this makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I have to think about it. If I do buy this lens, I might think about this harness. But I think the counterweight idea that Ben did was brilliant. It makes a lot of sense. And so I have to catch up on the replay. Did y'all discuss the P20 being discontinued? No. Not familiar with the P20. What is that? And Aguila says an EM1X style body with OM1-2 autofocus and 150 to 600 would be killer combo. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people love that EM1X, right? I just don't see that coming back. Now, Anthony emailed me and he had a really good idea about if they come out with an OM1 Mark III, they need to come out with a new grip, because people are complaining that the grip that they have for it now is too flimsy. And I can see that kind of. It's not a heavy duty grip. It's very form-fitting. It's durable enough for events, right? Doing portraits and things, which I'll probably use it this week at one of the events I'm doing. But if they can come out with an OM1 Mark III, and come out. They don't even have to come out with an OM1 Mark III. Just come out with a new grip that's more robust for the OM1 as is. And I think that will alleviate a lot of the problems that people are running into, or people that are missing the EM1X. They will appreciate a really good grip, right? Accessory grip. So that, that's an idea, is come out with, if they can't come out with a full-fledged EM1X, come out with a really freaking awesome grip. Like, call it, I don't know what they call the grip now, but just call it the OM1X grip, That would be awesome. And Whiplash says, I used the Panaleica 100-400 with my own one since the Olympus one wasn't available and the IS is fine. Yes. So again, it goes back to what are you shooting, right? Are you shooting birds in flight at, or let me rephrase that. It depends what your shutter speed is and if you're doing video. So if you're using fast shutter speeds and you don't do video, IS is almost irrelevant. If you're doing video though, you absolutely need the IS. And the dual sync IS is freaking amazing. On this 100 to 600, when I had the dual sync engaged, man, that thing was rock solid. It's freaking amazing. I should do a Johnny Come Lately review on this lens, right? Because it's right now I'm just doing first impressions, but the only area that this lens does not match my 300 f4, I mean, besides a tiny bit of sharpness difference, is the autofocusing motors are nowhere near as fast. The 300 f4 and the 150 to, or the 40 to 150 pro lenses, the 300 f4 motors are like this, man. They are fast. Point A to point B is like just a blink, whereas this one you can see it go from point A to point B, right? It just takes a little longer to get there. So for tracking, if the birds are really fast, like if I was doing swallows, tree swallows, I would definitely want to have my 300 f4 if I was trying to take pictures of tree swallows in flight. Because I'm not sure this would really be able to track a tree swallow coming right at you, right? It may not be fast enough for that. But you need the reach of a 600 for a tree swallow, right? Because they're only that big. Joby straps. Okay. And thank you, Tommy. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I've never seen you comment in our video in any of my streams that I can recall. In fact, I haven't seen your name before. But I could be mistaken because YouTube switched over to just using the handles or using the YouTube ID instead of people's handles. So, but either way, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. To make MFT, I'm still lost, Linda, what you're talking about. And I used a Panasonic Leica 100-400 on my EM1X, EM1 Mark III, and G9, and it's flawless on all three cameras. Yes. Panasonic, they better get back in the Micro Four Thirds game soon. Because all we hear from them is they're discontinuing this lens, they're discontinuing that lens. Oh, now I know what you're talking about, Linda. The Panasonic Leica 20mm. Now I know. Yeah. They just discontinued that without replacing it with something. I don't know. I would love Panasonic to get back into the game in a big way. They made fabulous lenses, the like I said, the 35 to 100, outstanding. And of course the pancake lenses were really good. Even the 14 2.8 or whatever it was, it's an awesome little lens. And the 25 1.4, I love that lens. That's one I actually own. So I have the 35 to 100 and the 25 1.4. The 15 1.7 I want to get eventually. And you know, and of course all the other lenses, but you know, OM Systems does not have a 15f 1.7. OM Systems does not have a rectilinear 9mm f1.7, you know, and Panasonic has these lenses, and they're awesome. They're not just like you know, kit lenses. These are freaking awesome lenses at reasonable prices. So I would love it if they continue to innovate on the lens side, and because they're making lenses for everyday use, whereas OM Systems, they keep coming out with these monster lenses, right? 100 to 400, 150 to 600, 50 to 200. Now they're rumored 50 to 250. You know, it's like, that's great if you love birding and wildlife, makes me happy, but what about the rest of us, right? That want to do street photography and events and portraits and stuff like that. I get it. You have the 45 1.2s and stuff like that, but you know, you don't have a 25 1.4. Panasonic does. You know, the 21.4, great lens, but that's a monster lens. Look at the 25 1.4. It has a little 46mm filter thread. What is the 21.4 from OM System? That's like, you know, 62mm or something. And it's not a small lens. I get it, optically it's better in every way, but sometimes having the perfect lens optically is not everything. Oh, it has a 58mm thread. Still, that's a whole centimeter bigger than my 25 1.4, right? And the G20 1.7. And Darren Land, thank you so much. That's so generous of you. I really appreciate that. Man, that is awesome. Thank you so much. You know, these super chats are awesome. And there's also the buy me a coffees and stuff down below. Every little bit helps me so much, and I, you know, like I said, that this is all I do really to earn money. Like the event I'm doing this Thursday is just pro bono because it's a friend of mine. I did get a photo job for tomorrow, but it's gonna snow, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go. But I get like one photo job a month or every couple months. They're far and few between, and that's by choice. I mean, I get it. You know, I could do a lot more if I really put some effort into it. But anyway, I don't want to, you know, at some point you have to take responsibility for your financial situation, right? It's got nothing to do with the economy or anything else. All it has to do with what are you doing to make more money, right? And so what I like about the M1X was the button spacing, great fit for my hands. I use a battery grip on the M1 Mark II, but still doesn't replicate the button landscape. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. So yeah, if they came out with a new grip that would mimic sort of the ergonomics of the M1X, I think they would have a winning accessory. A lot of existing users would buy that, right? And a good thing about the M1X is the joystick, although the M1 Mark III has one on the battery grip, doesn't, as it's inherited from the M1 Mark II. Okay. I'd never had a grip for my M1 Mark III, but I bought one for the OM1. And honestly, I haven't used it yet for a real job. I've played with it, but I haven't used it. Do you use the Lumix 7 to 14 for your promo? Yes, the F4. So I've been tempted to get the OM System 8 to 25 to replace that, but it's so expensive. And I can work around the flaring issues that I get on the 7 to 14. So I just don't get enough photo jobs to justify buying an 8 to 25. you know, and for just my personal stuff, I have the 8mm Fisheye Pro. I did try using that for a while, and it was okay, but the workflow is just a little bit awkward, right? Because I always had to defish the 8mm Fisheye Pro, and I just found using the 7-14 and being able to zoom in and out a little bit made the workflow in the field a lot easier. Rather than composing everything in a fisheye 8mm, having that little bit of zoom helps sometimes. And then when I get back home, the workflow at home is easier because everything's already rectilinear. The Panasonic G20 lives on my EM1 Mark III for street. Yeah, it is a great little lens. Penny might be going into APS-C on L mount, leaving MFT. Could be the lens exit on MFT. Interesting. The Leica 15mm is good on the street, and the Olympus 25-18 is good. Yep, they're both good. And I did get your email, Lauren. I read it, where you talked about these two lenses, actually. I just didn't reply. I'm sorry. But I do read your emails. I don't ignore anyone that emails me. I read them all. I just can't get back to them sometimes. So if you guys want to email me, I'm happy to read your emails and answer questions when I can. But Lauren usually sends me emails that are just informative, but usually you share links to your galleries, which I really enjoy. So I do see all of your galleries that you send me links to. So keep sending them. Don't stop. I appreciate it. And it's good to see your work. Lauren is really an amazing street photographer. Really has great work. And he has an Instagram account. At least you did. I don't know if you've decided to drop that or not, but you have an Instagram account. I think you overstated. I think you might be right, because when I saw 58mm here, I was like, oh, well, maybe not. But going back to the specs, it's 247 grams. So, yeah. So if we compare that to the Panasonic, yeah, you're right, Marco. I kind of, it's just bigger in my brain than it is in real life, right? The Panasonic Leica is smaller and lighter, and it has a 46mm thread. But see, it's just 9 elements, right? What was the what was this one? So this lens is 247, so it's roughly only about 15% heavier. Has a much bigger front element though. And this has 11 elements. So that accounts for the difference in weight, right? But it's 2.5 by 2.4. And this one was about the same, but it's not as long, right? It's about a 1/4 inch shorter. So you're right, Marco. It's not that much bigger. It's maybe 15% bigger across the board, right? In length and weight. But it makes sense because it's optically superior to the 25, has more elements, definitely going to have faster autofocus, right? So there's a lot to be said for the 20mm f1.4. I might have to look at that lens again, because it's a really interesting, it's a really nice focal length, 20mm. Because sometimes 17 is not quite wide enough, so I end up using my 12-45 f4 Pro to get the field of view that I want. And to be at 20 millimeters, you know, I'm at f4 on my kit lens, but I could be at f1.4 with this one, and that could come in handy, you know, in street photography. So I can see it. I don't know. You guys are giving me gas. As if it isn't bad enough already. Big snow coming, yes. I agree, but the 714 is good. Yeah, it's very, very sharp. I don't have any problems with it optically other than the flaring. And I work around it by just making sure I'm not pointing at a point of light. And then sometimes it can't be helped, and I just use the AI tool to brush out the flare, and it does a good job. And Eric's here. Eric, man, you came out yesterday. We were chatting for about 10 minutes, and then I never saw you again. You do that every time we go out on a field trip. I think there was one time you actually went to breakfast with us where we got the jibber jabber for a little bit. That and the long trip out to Conowingo or whatever it was. But we need to. You said you brought a more vintage camera with you, and I wanted to know what that was, because I was trying to guess what it was, and then I got distracted. You know how it is. I got distracted with some other people there. So tell me now, if you're still here, tell me what that vintage camera was. And then you had some weirdo lens on your G9 Mark II. It looked white or silver. A little tiny one. What was that? I was every time I see you, I have so many questions for you, but then you know how it is. I get distracted. And Tommy says, Leica made 2 APS-C cameras that used L-mount lenses. Yep, I wonder if Panasonic might make something similar. So I would be a little heartbroken if Panasonic came out with APS-C cameras, because they have a whole Micro Four Thirds community right there. Now, if they come out with L-mount LPSC cameras like you're suggesting, it was the Leica CL, the Leica TL, TL2. Those were the two models, right? CL and TL. And they didn't last very long, and they're terrific cameras. But I would be heartbroken if they did that. But we'll see. I mean, it's like everybody's saying, they should have made the S9, make a Micro Four Thirds version of the S9, and I think that would do well. Oh yeah, thanks for replying. Oh, okay. I try. And Rob Trek, it's bigger in my brain than in real life. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, that's hilarious, Marco. I didn't think my brain didn't go there. That's for sure. My mind didn't go there, but that's funny. And the Panasonic 20 is a Pana 21.7. Yep. I caught on later. And the OM20 1.4 versus the Pana Leica 25 1.4. Any opinions? I haven't shot with the 21.4, but I can tell you, being a pro lens and the reviews that I've seen, I guarantee it's going to be optically superior to the 25 1.4 from Panasonic Leica. That said, I like the rendering of the 25 1.4 versus my more pro lenses from OM Systems, because it's more nostalgic. You know, it's not a perfect lens optically, so you get a more of a vintage flavor to your images when you shoot wide open. When you stop the 25 1.4 down to f4 and f5.6, then it's optically, it's amazing. You know, it's as good as any OM System lens. But the OM System lenses, when they make a pro lens, the build quality, the autofocusing, the close focusing distance, you know, there's huge advantages there with the OM System lenses, both optically and pragmatically in terms of using it in the field. So I would say if you want the more perfect lens or the better lens, where it's going to be optically better, give you more options in the field with the close focusing, and better build quality, and arguably probably better weather sealing. I don't know, that for a fact, but because the new 25 1. I have the non-weather sealed version, but the new 25 1.4 supposedly has faster autofocus and weather sealing, but I guarantee I would be surprised if the 21.4 wasn't better in every metric: optically, build quality, weather sealing, and actual usability. Where and that's where its fault lies, right? Is that it's so perfect optically. When when I'm shooting, sometimes I like that nostalgic vintage feel that the lens, the 25, has wide open at 1.4 versus like I said, if I need optically perfect images like I do for my paid work, doing events, I like that more because I can always add vintage look in post if I need to, but I really much prefer optically perfect, as close to perfect as possible. That's when I use my OM system lenses. Like doing landscapes, birding, all of that stuff has to be optically perfect, right? I don't want a vintage feel to my landscape photos. I want something optically perfect. I want the perfect sunrise or sunset. I want to see every leaf and every vein in a tree and every fine detail in the bark. I love all that stuff in my landscapes. And that's when I would use my 12 to 45 Pro or 8mm fisheye or whatever. But when I'm just walking around and I just want to have some when you're feeling like vintage kind of look, I like the 25. Taking pictures of portraits of people and stuff, I really like the 25 1.4. Jibber jabber is Blarney in Ireland or Blether in Scotland. That's good. I'll have to start using those terms. If they put a high megapixel APS-C sensor in a weather sealed S5 II body, I would get more reach with my L-mount lenses. Yes. That is true. If they can make an APS-C sensor that is very fast, like a stacked APS-C sensor with 50 frames per second, something like that, I could see that putting a big competition against OM systems easily give OM systems competition, because they're starting to come out with some L-mount glass didn't they just come out with a really good telephoto that was affordable? It was basically a kit lens, but it was for L-mount, like a 100 to 400 or something, right? And on APS-C, that would be a 600 equivalent. That would get a lot of people into the system. So I think the pixel density on the MFT sensors is reaching its max. Well, it's all relative. 25 would probably be like Panasonic did, is probably about as much as I'd want to go. Going to 33, there'll definitely be some compromises. A 33 megapixel MFT micro four thirds would be a very specialized camera. Like I wouldn't want to do birding with it, but I wouldn't mind doing landscapes with it where you can just keep the ISO down for long exposure stuff. Maybe even for astrophotography, 33 megapixel sensor, landscapes, things like that. It's a lot like Fuji does that a lot, right? They have their high-res XH2, then their more speedy XH2S, and they did that with another camera, I thought. Or there's another camera where they came out with two, right? I can't remember now. But the XH2 and XH2S is the one that comes top of mind because I have an XH2. And hello from the UK. Have you decided on Nikon ZF going dark here? Got a good squirrel shot. Yeah, John, I looked at it yesterday and I just didn't pull the trigger on it. Maybe later. It's not as big and bulky as I remembered it. When I actually held it in the camera, so I'm like, this is not really that bad, you know? Um, but then, I got my Nikon DF, the previous one, the old DSLR one that I really like. And that's what's really keeping me from buying a ZF, because I get really as much satisfaction and enjoyment from my Nikon DF as I think I would out of a ZF, right? Now the DF is certainly more bulky than a ZF would be, even with the lenses. But I like my DF, but the ZF definitely has an amazing sensor in it, right? It has the same sensor as my old D750 did, and that thing killed. And now it's even better with the new processing. And whatever else they did to the board, where there's really a very much better signal to noise ratio. I'm seeing a lot less noise in the ZF images than my DF, when I compare them online. So I'm still mildly tempted by the better image quality and the really good lenses that Nikon makes. Nikon makes really good glass. I really like their 50 millimeter and their 35. Those two are amazing. On a side note though, I'm still tempted by getting a Panasonic S1R, Mark 1 or Mark 2. I haven't decided yet, because the L-mount glass is also really amazing for the price point. I think L-mount glass is the finest glass you can get for the money for a full frame system, right? I think they surpass Nikon, Canon. Just my opinion. I mean, I don't have any hard data to back that up, but I can tell you I've shot with all of the systems at one point or another, and I was always impressed with the image that I got from the L-mount glass on my S1R. I used to have an S1R. Biggest regret of my life was selling that thing, or getting rid of it. It just I really miss my 50 millimeter 1.8 on my S1R. That was magic. Even the kit lens 20 to 60 millimeter just produced amazing images, and that's like a $300 lens, and it was just unbelievable. So that's the other part of the thing, is like the ZF has, I think, probably the better sensor or better processing in camera, and the styling is certainly way better. I love the look of the ZF, but I'm tempted by the S1R, in my memories of the S1R and the 50 millimeter 1.8 and the 20 to 60 that I had, and how good those images were coming out of my S5. I used to have an S5 and the S1R, and I really miss those cameras now. So I'm thinking I can get an S1R or an S5 Mark II, which would be an amazing camera, or an S1R Mark 1 for about the same price. They're both selling on the used market for $1,100-$1,200. And I get that the sensors probably are not as good as in the ZF, but the ZF glasses, the S lenses from Nikon, are pretty pricey, and they're good lenses, but ultimately I'm going to be better off money-wise with an S5 II or an S1R when I build out the lenses. I'm just overthinking it. The solution is just buy it all. I should just buy it all. I don't know. Just go into debt. You know, like Marco always says, you know, if it brings you a little bit of happiness, just do it. How long do we have in life? You know, you have to kind of balance how much money you spend versus how many years do you have left. And you know, I'm on the back nine of my life, right? So who knows? And the Kodak AZ425, the white lens, a Kodak AZ4. I never heard of that. The white lens is a 14 to 42 power zoom. I was testing the new firmware for Pani. It was gleefully surprised. I was gleefully surprised. The focus sticks well in IA and A mode, both single and. Okay. I don't remember a white 14 to 42, but like I said, I've never been heavy into Panasonic, but a Kodak AZ425. Maybe if I see it, it'll. It's a bridge camera. So 1,000mm equivalent. Wow. So it's got to be a 1 over 2. Yeah, it's a 1 over 2.3. Huh. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. And it's got PASM dial, little flash. So it's like a legit bridge camera. It's at Adorama for $138. No kidding. Okay. Pretty neat. Pretty neat, Eric. Thanks. Thanks for telling me. Laundromat time. Okay. Fun day, though. I do love washing 8 loads in an hour. Oh, my God. I recently heard rumors about Panic going APS-C. Doesn't make much sense, though. Yeah, we were just talking about that. You're thinking of the new 100 to 5. Yeah, it's a 100 to 500, right? That would be an awesome lens on an APS-C, or it's even awesome on their full frame cameras. The current 25 megapixel on my G9 Mark II is the density of 100 megapixel full frame, and that is pushing it. Yes. Yeah, because we lose our signal to noise ratio, right? Ultimately. Tommy says, I have the S1R that I would love to use for landscape, but it's a, yeah, that's kind of why I got rid of it, because it was just so bulky. That was part of it. That was probably the smallest part of it for me. The biggest part was the autofocus. I like to take pictures of my dog, and it could not handle anything unless she was laying there sleeping. Then I could get a nice picture of her. But if she was moving at all, it was struggling. But I will say the very best image, or not the very best, but one of my favorite images of my dog is taken with the S1R. This one here. This is one of my favorite images of Ellie. It misfocused slightly on the eye, but I don't care. And this was with the 51.8, I believe. Yeah. I just love this image. There's another one here. And you know, I have a 51.8 for my Canon, and it doesn't look like this at all. It's just not even close. How smooth and buttery the autofocus area is, the transition from in focus to out of focus, the colors, and just this 3D depth feeling that I get. This image, I have a very, very strong, almost three-dimensional feel to it. And this is what this is what keeps me wanting to go back and get the S1R with the 51.8. It's just so I can capture images like this. And I get it, okay? So, let's see, this is one here. So I've done these comparisons, right? The OM1 with the 20, let me expand this out. OM1 with the 25 1.4, XH2 with the 33 1.4, and A7R5 with the 55 1.8. So these are all very, very strong lens camera combinations, right? And I look at all of these, although this one is gorgeous. You know, when you pixel peep these, and these are not scaled, these are 1-to-1 ratio over here on the right side. I don't know. I overthink things sometimes. I should just go out and take a good picture and not worry about all these all these things that give me gas. Let's see some street photography from Rob. I want to see if Rob survives the 3 angry women as he returns to more daring photography. Then a GoFundMe for his... Oh, God. I know. See, Lauren's referring to... I've had so many really bad... Relative to how many times I went out and did street photography versus the number of times I got crap for doing street photography in the street from this one gang of women just ganged up on me. It was, yeah, that was bad. I try to forget it. And then another time someone accused me of taking pictures of children and wanted to see all the pictures on my camera I'm like, seriously? Another guy's banging on the glass, you know. I'm just terrible at street photography. I need to up my game, right? Maybe not be so obvious. But I'm of the mindset that if you're going to go out and do street photography, just own it. Just be out there and take pictures and don't worry about what people think. But when I get these kind of reactions, I'm starting to think maybe I need to be a little more stealthy, you know? So I haven't done street photography in years because it brings up those emotions and those memories when I do it. I have the Clonat 528. Interesting camera, yep. The joy of Photox will outlast any desire for new gear. Your stock of cameras is more than enough. Time is all we need. It cannot be bought. You're right. You're right. So... All right, so I think I've caught up to the chat. So I'm going to share one other thing that I'm working on. I don't know if you can see this. So this is a little print. The live stream doesn't do it justice. There's one. Here's another one I took real quick. Right? With the little Insta360 camera. Insta360 is definitely coming out with a Micro Four Thirds interchangeable lens camera. I guarantee it, because they are really sending out all their gear. They just send me a bunch of stuff. They're sending stuff to photographers, right, to review their little action cam here. They are doing market research that they're going to put into a Micro Four Thirds camera that they're going to make. The challenge, this light's not part of it. The challenge they have really of going into a Micro Four Thirds camera is the autofocusing system has to be really robust. You can make a robust autofocus system on a little tiny camera like this because there's no depth of field. It's virtually non-existent anyway. So how hard does the autofocus have to work? But when you talk about interchangeable lens camera and different lenses, yeah, you can put the AI algorithms and things into it for subject detect and face detect. I'm sure that'll all work fine on the software side, but how do they make the hardware do what the software wants it to do, right? That's a whole nother leap in engineering. And I think that's why every camera system, you know, struggles with autofocus, right? I mean, yeah, we have our top of the game Sonys and Canon and Nikon. They're all really good. So is my OM system camera, my OM1 and my OM3. But that's not a small thing. You know, Fuji's still struggling with it. You know, the little bit of photography I do, the autofocus systems are from my EM10 Mark II is good enough for the kind of photography that I do, save for the birding. But they're doing market research on this. But this thing, now they got a printer. And the prints are awesome. This is pretty much straight out of camera. This was a studio shot I just pulled from my portfolio, right? That, you know, I say portfolio, but this is just a selfie I did with my dog. And this one I just took a picture with the camera in low light and then printed it. Like that. Well, it takes 2 minutes to print. It's a dye sub process. But seriously, if they make a 360, if they make a Micro Four Thirds camera, that would make sense. They could make a Micro Four Thirds camera this size easily with the grip and all. That's gonna be brutal. That's gonna be brutal to OM Systems and Panasonic. They're gonna kill it. Because as much as I hate touch screens and using and swiping and rubbing my screen, I hate rubbing the screen like this to get the things. I manage with this. And I can actually, you know, it didn't take a lot for my brain to get used to doing this. They're gonna kill it, especially the kids today. Man, they don't even have to look at the screen. They can just. But anyway, that's what I'm working on now, is this, and I'm working on this X5 trigger video. None of this is sponsored, by the way. I just do this to help you guys out, right? Well, this one's kind of sponsored because they gave me the flash, although they didn't pay me. But this one's definitely not sponsored because I bought this one myself. All right, you guys, I'm gonna call it here. The printer's $100. It's $100 for the printer. It's freaking awesome. I did have a problem though. The paper that came with the printer jammed and I can't use it. So that's 10 sheets that came with the printer that don't work. But the other, I broke out another pack and it worked just fine. But the Captain Hook, I only care about Olympus and OM Systems. Yes, I can appreciate that. Oh my God, Image Maven is here. How are you? That was awesome. Thanks again for being on my stream last month. That was great. But I'm just about to head out because I'm getting hungry, and I gotta eat. So you guys, I want you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun talking to you. And again, thank you for the super chats and donations. They are greatly appreciated, and new memberships. Because that's how I keep going here and make a living. But I want you guys to have a good day. Try to do that every day and you'll have a good life, right? Eat healthy, exercise. I want you guys to be here a long time with me, and I hope to see you guys all again